What's up, YouTube family? Another video here. Pastor Gerald from the Pastor's Cave. Right now I am in our temporary student ministry building here at Gum Branch, and we are continuing to look at this series, Am I Called to Ministry? Now, I have in the last 3 videos, if you haven't watched them, I hope you will, I have explained my call to ministry, the way that God orchestrated things. And I guess this video would be more of a confirmation of my call to ministry. Now, a couple of things that I have not shared in previous videos. Ooh, the light flickered. The weather's bad here. You know, we've been considering how I responded to my call, how other people saw that call on my life, including a couple of pastors, my spouse, the church that I attended. It goes without saying, but I probably need to say it, that the call is based on qualifications. Okay, so if you go to 1 Timothy chapter 3, if you go to Titus, you see these qualifications for a pastor, elder, bishop. And so the assumption is that those qualifications are met, and people who see your call to ministry see the fruit of those qualifications in your life. Okay, so this is not just, you know, some of my buddies got together and they say, yeah, I'd be a good pastor, and so you're in ministry, right? There's a qualification process. For us, there's an ordination process that we have to go through, and our character is examined. And so I haven't got to the ordination part of my story yet, so that's why I haven't shared that. So anyway, February 2008, I get licensed by my home church to be a preacher of the gospel, a pastor. And so over the next couple of months, what I looked for was opportunities to go and to preach outside of my home church. So I was kind of opened up, you know, if somebody needs somebody to fill in. And honestly, I preached, I think, a time or two at my father-in-law's church, but other than that, not a lot of opportunities opened up. So I thought, So July of 2008, I preached. So I'm going to tell y'all, this is how God works. And so just follow me on this story, or this is how God worked in my situation. Somewhere around the first weekend of July of 2008, a guy that I knew, a pastor friend of mine, he said, hey, he actually called me in June. He said, hey, I'm going to be out, like, let's say, I don't remember the exact dates. Let's say the first Sunday of July. Could you come fill in for me? And I said, well, I was, at the time I was in the Florida National Guard. And I said, well, I have drill that weekend. I said, but let me call my platoon sergeant and see, somebody was looking for me, I guess, see if I can get out of, if I can make that drill up, and then I'll let you know. And he says, okay. So I called my platoon sergeant. He said, yeah, just come in through the week, make it up, no big deal. I said, okay. So I go that first Sunday in July and I preach at this church. Now, while I'm preaching there, the pastor at the first church I would end up pastoring, he resigns that morning. And so here's where things get interesting. The lady that leads the music in the church that I would end up pastoring, her husband, who I know, he was at the church where I filled in that Sunday morning. So again, I've made arrangements to be at this church, to fill in. This guy, we might say, just happens to be there. His wife just happens to lead music at a church where the pastor just resigned same morning as I'm preaching. And this guy that I know that was at the church I was filling in at, he works with my wife at the college. And so Monday morning, he asked my wife, he says, hey, I went and I heard Gerald preach, you know, at Unity Baptist yesterday. The pastor at our church resigned yesterday morning, which is Union Baptist. Do you think Gerald would come and fill in for us? She said, well, I don't know. You know, I'm sure he would, but you need to call and talk to him. So he calls me and talks to me, and we get it set up. The following Sunday, I'm going to go preach at Union Baptist Church, which would be the first church I would end up pastoring. And so I kind of told a little bit of this story in the first video. I go over there the first Sunday. I tell them I can preach for you Sunday morning, Sunday night. And I do that, and then they ask if I can come back the next Sunday, and then they ask if I can come back the next Sunday and the next Sunday. And so this rolls on for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then finally, the deacon who had been coming to me asking me if I could come back the next week, he says, "You ready to quit doing this?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "We want you to come be our pastor." And I said, "Well, okay." He said, "Well, can you just come sit down and talk to the deacons this afternoon at 5 o'clock or whatever?" It was an hour before the service. I believe it was at 5 o'clock. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And so I go and I interview with them. And of course, I've already kind of shared part of this. They wanted me to come. The church was in a bad spot. They had split. I later come to find out they had like $800 or $900 in the bank. They were a hurt church, and none of that mattered to me though. I just wanted to come be their pastor, love on them, and serve the Lord there. And so I agreed to come, and then we called my pastor at my home church, and we set up a time that I would go through the ordination process and be ordained into ministry. And so, it was just really neat watching all that work out. Now, here's another interesting part of what God did. I did not know this until I had been there probably a year. I was visiting that deacon that had come to me and asked me if I'd be willing to come be their pastor. He had gotten sick, and I was over at his house visiting one day, and he was close to the end of his life. And he said, "I want you to know something." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I was against calling you to be our pastor." He said, "So if you ever hear that from somebody," he said, "I want you to hear it from me first." He said, "Now I want to explain that." He said, "I was not against you as an individual. I was not against you as a pastor." He said, "But when our last pastor preached a message and walked out of the church, we agreed that we would be diligent in searching for our next pastor." So the history is they had kind of hired him the same way that they hired me. Just the guy shows up, we like him, let's offer him the job. And there were some things about him, I guess, that they didn't know that came out later. And so his intention, the church's intention, was to say, "Hey, we're going to be diligent. We're going to go through the process. We're going to interview multiple people. We're just going to do all this." He said, "So I was not against you. I was against the fact that we were getting ready to break the process that we decided on, that we would be diligent and that we would take our time and we would make sure that you were the person." And so I say all that to say this. You just see God at work. You see God at work in the timing. You see God at work in that He would have me show up there the next Sunday, that I would be able to minister to them and to love on them, and that first Wednesday night after not having a pastor, they had met together, voted, and decided that, hey, we're going to be diligent in this process, and then they would break that process because essentially they felt like, because at the time I was a young guy, I had young children, this is not me speaking, this is what they told me. We felt like if we didn't go ahead and offer you the job, somebody else would. And so we didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. And so that's kind of why they moved fast. Now, whether that was the right decision or not, who knows, but that's how everything went down. And so it was just really neat to look back at it and to see the hand of God in it, to see the timing of it. And so I'm just so grateful for that. And as I said in the first video, man, I love the time that I had at that church. It was just such a blessing to me. And it taught me a whole lot, about ministry and about serving. And I'll be forever grateful for that congregation taking a chance on And I say young guy, I wasn't really young. I was 33 years old by then, but they took a chance on somebody that had no pastoral experience, somebody that was new to the ministry, and they were in a vulnerable situation, and God moved their hearts in such a way that they would still take a chance on me. So, when you have things like that happen, it just kind of helps confirm that, okay, I'm doing what God desires for me to do. I'm going in the way that He would have me to go, and so it was just such a blessing to me. So anyway, I hope that story in some way maybe encourages somebody, and I hope that story is a blessing to you. So, hey, I do appreciate you watching, and my prayer for you is always the same, that the Lord might richly bless you, and that you might see all of your blessings as from Him.